All right. I've gotten the go from our sound folks upstairs and downstairs. So, welcome everyone. What a wonderful group we have here. It is my joy to welcome you to this time of storytelling. This is our 150th year together. Well, I guess it's actually our 151st year together as a congregation as we're celebrating our 150th birthday this year. And I don't even know exactly where the idea came from, but as our steering committee kind of talked through ideas, this emerged, this idea of calling forth from the congregation memories and stories that would help us reconnect with our history, our past, and who we have been, and also who we are now, to remind us of where God is calling us. So we have past, present, and future right in this moment together. I want to welcome those who may be joining us over live stream or watching this later. We hope that this is a fun evening for everybody. And I'm going to hand it over. Well, let me open with prayer. Some of us had dinner downstairs and we had a beautiful prayer led by Bing, but many of us are gathering for the first time in this moment. So let's pray together before we begin. Gracious and loving God, from the beginning of time, your people have told stories. Stories about their relationship with you. Stories that teach. Stories that make us laugh. Stories that bring tears to our eyes. And we gather in a long tradition now to share with one another some of the stories that have emerged from this particular congregation, this particular place, as we remember those members of this church family who have passed away, who are no longer walking the journey with us. We give you thanks for their faith and their witness. As we look ahead to the church you call us to be, we give you thanks that you continue to go before us. So we dedicate this time to you, maybe a time of celebration and joy, and rededicating ourselves to the work of shining your loving light in our community and beyond. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right, our MC for the night is Mr. Tom Lee. I wish we had a curtain and some music to play as he comes out, but I'm going to hand it over to him.
Thanks, Carol. I always liked that for all the years Johnny Carson did the show, he had one song. And you know, just wouldn't you like to have that one sort of thing that when people played, they knew it was you? That'd be great. I think you just heard my song. Very quiet. Well, welcome. My job is as a lawyer and a lobbyist, and sometimes people ask me, well, how do you persuade somebody? How do you sometimes stand talking to somebody? And I tell them that I tell stories. And that almost always encourages someone else to tell theirs. And that if we do that, if we start from story, it is a lot easier to have the hard conversation, which in any good relationship you have. This is a good relationship. And it's a good relationship with us and with the spirits that we summon when we gather here, as Carol said, over a century and a half. It's a relationship that includes persons present and absent, and always includes the presence of the Holy Spirit. Story is how it starts. Anybody who ever tells you that Scripture is dull has never read about poor Samuel getting dragged from loser to loser to pick a king, which, by the way, everybody wants except God, but God's doing it anyway. Samuel fulfills his mission, even though most of the time in his life, who can tell? But Samuel is a story. Moses, how many times does Moses say, I am about to throttle these people? And sometimes God says, I am about to throttle these people. And Moses says, not yet. They haven't quite finished their story. Let's see what they do. Let's see where it goes. Story is the woman at the well. Story is Mary and the women running back from the tomb. How many stories do you know begin with, let me tell you what I just saw? Did you hear? That's story. Story is what we pledge to do every time we affirm a child's baptism, an adult's, or our own, and we pledge our witness. If you get scared of witness, it's just story. Just tell what you saw. As an old judge used to say, what you perceived with your five senses, what you heard, smelled, tasted, felt, saw. So story is what we're going to do tonight, and I'm going to shut up and make sure you've got lots of time to hear stories from around the room. I will let you know one of the things we asked of you who came downstairs, and maybe a few of you who came in the door a moment ago, we asked you to fill out some cards. And because we suspected there were stories in the room beyond those that are going to be beautifully and wonderfully told tonight, I'm going to read you one that I know a little something about, just to give you a sense of these stories. When I moved to Nashville in 1983, I did not know a soul and wasn't particularly happy to be here. Nancy Carol Miller-Heron, associate pastor at the time, brought a group of young, single, professional women together for a Bible study, and I found a home. One of the folks who have found a home here for generations, like many of you, is the Riley family. And there are 3 generations of Rileys. 3? 4? 3 now here. 5 overall in the history of West End Methodist and then United Methodist Church. Rileys, the floor is yours.
Ooh, those lights are bright. I'm Laura Barton Riley, for those of you whom I may not know. I put my Barton maiden name in there because the Bartons go way back. And we heard earlier how Buddy Benedict is going to speak to us tonight, and the Benedicts and the Bartons go way back. My grandfather and Andrew Benedict actually bought Ward Seminary and started Ward Belmont. This is a little piece of historical information. But anyway, we are so happy to be here and having now a 5th generation right here. And so that's just wonderful for all of us. When Rob and I moved back to Nashville from Houston, there was no discussion as far as where we would sit in the sanctuary. I sat with my parents about the 5th row back on the lectern side. Then my family came along. We sat about the 5th row back on the lectern side. And so that's where we still sit today. And we like it there. We feel kind of out of place if we go to the other side of the church. But anyway, think about what else I'm saying here. I got to look at my notes a second. Sorry. You get up here and you get kind of nervous. Oh, okay. So we moved back here from Houston in 1985, and when we came back, Robert, my son, our son, was 5 or almost 5, and I was involved with the children's ministry, and we had the Family Fellowship Festival, which it was a great fundraiser. I'm not even sure if we still have it or not, but for the children's ministry and for the preschool and the day school. And we had a silent auction, and we just had all sorts of activities for the children. Well, Robert would get excited about it, and he said he just couldn't wait to go to the Family Ship Festival. And then a couple of years later, I was expecting Carolyn, my younger daughter, Ellen being our other child who's not here. And I played handbells. I loved handbells, always have, always will. I played handbells as a youth, and then when I came back from Houston, immediately got back in the handbell choir. And when I was expecting Carolyn, we practiced up here in the fourth floor area outside here, and we were in a U shape. And of course, when I was pregnant, she was right there with me. And then about 2 weeks after I had the baby, I brought her, put her in a little infant seat in the middle of our U, and she would just happily look around as long as we were playing. The minute we stopped playing, she would cry bloody murder. And to this day, she loves music and is quite musical. So I just say that I love this church with all my heart, no matter, I've been here for a long time. Rob and I were married here. I've been through on all sorts of committees, been on youth mission trips, been on 2 mission trips to Guatemala, various committees, and I love it. I have a great feeling when I walk in that sanctuary, and thanks to Carol, I have a great feeling when I walk out. And as Robert so lovingly pointed out to me at dinner tonight, I'll be here forever because Rob and I have our spots in the columbarium. So I'm going to turn it over to Robert.
So I'm Robert Riley. I was racking my brain trying to think of what I was going to say tonight, and a lot of things were similar to my mom, sitting in the same spot every week at church and being there with my grandparents and the rest of our family, obviously. And I decided to go a different route. So there was a short hiatus after I was in college. I went and lived in Atlanta for about 6 years, and my mom kept pestering me that I needed to go to church because I would meet a girl there. And I would always mumble back, "Oh, that's not why I want to go to church, Mom." And work situations changed, and I ended up coming back. I immediately got involved here back at West End. I got on several committees and started the first of my Sunday school classes that I started, only to meet my best friend and bride. And so I guess mothers know best. And meant so much to me to be standing in the same place that my parents had stood, I don't know how many years before. And, now having started our second Sunday school class of young married couples that had no children, and now many of our best friends are in that class, and all the kids are growing up together almost like siblings. And, it just means the world to me, and I can't wait to pass the torch on to our 5th generation one day.
I'm Carolyn. I'm the youngest child in the family, for those who don't know me. And similarly to Robert, it's sort of funny to try to come up with a memory of a place that's just always been there in your family. I was telling my mom it's kind of like trying to think of a memory from the house that you grew up in. It's just all of the memories are there. A lot of memories are here, like special days and just kind of regular Sundays. So it is kind of, there aren't a ton that really stand out. When I was trying to think of an early memory, the only thing I could really think of, which is sort of silly, is I remember thinking it was really neat that the toilets and the sinks were really low at the preschool. I was like, they're just my size. This is so cool. So I was trying to think of something early, and I do remember feeling that way. And just stayed involved in the church all along, have memories from children's choir and then confirmation and getting older and playing for Coach Perkle on the Thunder Chickens with Lauren too, and getting involved in the youth group and really developing some leadership skills within the youth group, which was neat because I got to make announcements every week and things like that. And then another significant thing that I have West End to thank for is my career choice, because I went on all of the mission trips with the youth group, and I really decided that I wanted service to be built into my daily life and my work, and decided to become a nurse, and I have West End to thank for that. So, Sally Ann.
My name is Sally Ann Riley. I'm in the biggest of three girls, and
You forgot what you're going to say. Tell them what we were in a couple Saturdays ago.
and a couple Saturdays ago.
It was the Great Day of Service. That's what it was called. Yeah.
When it was the great day of service, me and my grandma and my grandpa, we went to the great day of service where I sacked potatoes.
You want to say anything else? You were going to say that you and both of your sisters were baptized here.
All my sisters were baptized here, and I was baptized here. And I really hope that when I grow up, that I will grow up to always sit in the same row that we sit in now and see the things.
Okay.
We had a dear friend who was part of our Sunday school class for many, many years, and when she and her family moved out of state, we took the chair that she always sat in and put a placard, a little bronze placard on the back of the chair, and if you go to, I think it's room 323, where the Discourse and Discovery class meets at the end of the hall, and you find the right chair, it says the Sandy Childress Chair of Worship and Hospitality. Chairs are important around here. I thought I'd share this because of the importance of worship in this space. I'll never forget our first Easter Sunday at West End United Methodist Church. Cosmo was maybe 2 weeks old, and we really needed to escape our house, thanks to the 3 and 5-year-olds. Wearing the newborn baby during Easter brunch and service is a memory I will forever cherish. Alan Patton, you have the microphone. There you are. You have the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Alan Patton. I'm a lifelong member of West End. Walking up here, I just thought about a lot of memories. One was how the physical plan has changed over the years. When I was young, we had Sunday school classes in the buildings that stood where the parking lot is now, and we watched those being purchased by the church and then torn down, and wonderful parking lot with wonderful landscaping in the lot. We've had all kinds of changes, such as the lectern turning into a pulpit, Reed Hall, the columbarium, and the nice courtyard there, and just so many wonderful changes. We didn't have a gym when I was young. We still had the basketball team, but no gym. Played in other churches' basketball teams. And our family sat in the back row because some of us fell asleep from time to time, and we liked being run on the back row. But my spiritual journey evokes many memories related to West End, beginning with kindergarten, which is on the lower level, and I remember falling off of the jungle gym and breaking my collarbone. And there I progressed to youth choirs, confirmation, youth retreats, church retreats at Worship Springs, shadowing my parents, who were members of the Wesley Forum class, which met in McWhorter Hall, learning how there was a connection between the back of the sanctuary and McWhorter Hall, and we'd run up and down through that area. Probably still exists. The MYF, playing on the West End basketball team and the softball team. My adult relationship with the church, when I came back, the church embraced me and after my college, naval service, graduate school. Upon returning, my wife and I joined a class of 30-year-olds and enjoyed the relationships we had in that Sunday school class. We attended the less formal church services that Buddy Benedict conducted in the Scales Chapel, where we had guitar music with our young children in tow. We explored the theology that Russ Montford eloquently dished out, and then served as leaders of the Marriage Enrichment Program, which was really a great program we had back in those days. Served as an administrative board member on the Trustees Committee, Building and Grounds Committee, and participated in the Habitat Build, and still participate in the Room in the Inn. My journey led me to being a founding member of the Bible and Spirit class as I've tried to seek a little more knowledge of the Bible and a little more spiritual understanding of myself and where I wanted to be. The journey with West End has continued into the next generations with the celebration of the wedding of our oldest daughter and the baptism of our 3 grandchildren in the magnificent sanctuary. Participating in Bible study and the trip to Israel with other church members has nurtured and extended and refreshed friendships. I've been nurtured and refreshed by every aspect of my involvement with West End, and West End has and continues to be the center of my spiritual life.
One of the things that impressed me that I noticed shortly after joining West End in 1989, was how many cars in the parking lot of the church on a Sunday morning had a sticker on the back, the same sticker, and it said Jim Reed Chevrolet. And so we bought a Subaru from Jim Reed Chevrolet, Subaru, many years after that. And you may have too, and you may have had this experience. You may have gotten a phone call that started something like this. Oh, hello, Tom Lee. This is Jim Reed. I'm so pleased you purchased a vehicle from our dealership. Our family is so happy. And then it went on from there. I got that call one morning. It was a voicemail. There was another voicemail immediately after that said, oh, this is my friend Tom Lee. Casey Reed.
I don't know that call was from me. I think that was from Granddad or Dad or somebody. All right, Casey Reed, member. So I like the service trips. 3 minutes, okay? Give me a 30-second warning. Guatemala is awesome. It's at central part of that small country. Lago Atitlan is a lake that is in a giant caldera, and there are active volcanoes. And so we go down there to work. We support ODIM, the Organization for the Development of the Indigenous Maya. And so Wednesday is our day off. We go down there for a week, and we hike up to the cross, which is, it's a good size hill up, and it looks down over the town, and there are pictures of the church, in the church, of our group, and you can see down to the village below. But several years there were young people, particularly Sean Kennedy, who said, let's hike to the nose. Well, the nose was the top of the range, and there's a hill, a hillock, a point that could be the nose of a sleeping Mayan And so we would say, to the nose. All right. So, okay. And Sean had done it several times. He practically ran up. And I said, okay, I'll go with you. I think Lauren Lesturgeon was with us this time. And so they organized a trip to the nose. And we had a local guide. And the director of ODEEM, I'm forgetting her name now, but she said, the guide has been paid. He'll take you to the nose. And so we went to the cross, and we said blessings, and we wished each other well, and then we led out to the nose. And it was at least 500 and maybe 1,000 feet higher, up. Not dangerous to death, but steep, hand over hand, crawling up. So we get up, and we're on a small area, and our guide says, "Welcome to the chin." And we said, "No, we're going to the nose." "No, you only paid for the chin." And we said, "No, we paid for the nose." He said, I'm not taking you to the nose because the farmers here, they're mean. They're dangerous. They have machetes, and they won't let you come across their land unless you pay me, and I will pay them. And we went, yeah, we get it. So we got together, and we pulled some money together, about $10 a head. And he said, oh, yeah. So then on we went, down through some fields, and there was a farmer with a machete, but he didn't look that dangerous. And so I tried to listen to the conversation that our guide was having with this farmer as we went through, but he said, no, you keep going. You keep going. You know, my suspicion is that he split with the farmer and kept half for himself, but we knew we were taken, but we made it to the nose, and it was beautiful, and it was a lovely day, and in spite of being taken, by this sharpster. So I recommend the mission trips, and I hope you have an adventure like that one.
Well, I just don't know. One of the great joys of the church is that our families not only at West End are here vertically, but we spread out horizontally across generation. And so Sally Swore and Mary Gamble and Tom Gamble, I think, are here. Come up and tell your stories. Yeah, all three.
Okay. Many of my memories at the church revolve around music, and I thought I'd share a couple of those, and it's going to involve audience participation. I'd really appreciate that. But one of the Bible stories I remember the very best is because of the song Zacchaeus, which you all know, I think. I looked at my two boys who grew up here, and they just looked blindly back at me, like no idea what I was talking about. And yet my daughter-in-law and my younger son's girlfriend both jumped right in and sang it with me. So I know you can, right? Okay. Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. He climbed up in a sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see. And as our Savior passed that way, he looked up in the tree and he said, Zacchaeus, you come down, because I'm going to your house today, because I'm going to your house today. And a few years later, I was at either a Bible school or a retreat, I'm not sure, but Reverend Still always is pictured in my mind when I think of this song. So you must have been there. You all know the camp song, Skinnamarink Dinky Dink? That's not how we sing it. Ready? West End Methodist Church, 1968. I love you, I love you. You can go it. West End Methodist Church, 1968. Deed I do, I love you in the morning and in the afternoon. I love you in the evening underneath the moon. Oh, West End Methodist Church in 1968. I love you, deed I do. And I think we just need to change it annually, and I'll keep on singing. I don't know how that got dropped in 1968, but I got and we won't. But that's how old I am. I was a little girl. And then one more memory was fourth grade Sunday school. One of my teachers, I think it was Mrs. Sladen, but I'm not sure, but she could really play the piano. So we sang and sang and sang, and our favorite song was "Go Tell It on the Mountain." So fast forward many years, Tom and I are going to have dinner with our future daughter-in-law's parents at their home in Jackson, Tennessee, with all the extended family. And we arrive, and Natalie's, they're all from there. And her granddaddy is a Baptist preacher, university president, divinity school president. They're very Baptist. And we went for dinner, had a wonderful time. Thank you so much. We're going to go back to the hotel. Oh, no, the children want to perform. They had some grandchildren there, 5 and 7-ish. 2 and 5. Anyway, they did what children do. They tumbled about the living room, and they sang on a hairbrush, and we applauded, and they were darling. Thank you so much. You've had a lovely evening. It's time to go. The little one tugs on my shirt and says, "Mary, it's your turn." And he hands me the hairbrush and says, "And you shall sing 'Go Tell It on the Mountain.'" And I thought to myself, you watch this Methodist go. So I knocked out 2 verses complete with the chorus, and I thought we should sing the chorus together now. Okay? Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. Thank you, West End, for the memories.
Oh, gosh. That's a hard act to follow here. So, all right, I was baptized in this church a long, long time ago, and a few memories I have is our family, my parents and my 2 brothers, we sat in the transept every Sunday, along with the Reeds. Jim Reed and his family were there also. And I do remember Dr. Henley, even though I was a teenager, he did do fantastic sermons, and I do remember that. Also, and when I was a teenager, we had our Sunday school in a 2-story house, as Alan mentioned earlier, on the corner of Louise Avenue. And we would have Sunday school, and we'd also come back Sunday night and have worship services on Sunday night for my 3 or 4 years in high school. But little did I know that my future wife was a first grader looking on from the parking lot saying, "I wish I could see those big boys." You know, that's all I have. Thank you.
I'm Sally Spoor, and guess what I'm going to talk about? Music camp, my favorite thing at West End. It's not such an old memory, but for me, it's my best memory. I loved music camp. I'm the least musical person in my family, as my sister will attest to. I have 0 talent, and so music camp was a great place for me to find myself. In fact, and this is true, the youth choir director, when I was in the 5th grade, told me there were better ways I could serve the Lord. And it kind of hurt my feelings, but you know what? He was exactly right, and I found my joy for 16 years in music camp. I loved every single minute of it. The counselors worked so hard, the kids were so great, and I learned to wear a lot of different hats in music camp. We worked so hard in the arts and crafts department to make the costumes. Everything we made, Noah's Ark, was part of a costume. Let's see, the rock slinger. Anybody remember the rock slinger? And then giddy up, Gideon. Here we went. But I loved every minute. I loved Andrew making it work. Whether there were 85 or 25 campers, it was a perfect show. And Heath, let's see, can you remember? Anybody remember Heath telling you the stories? And how did we all remember? I can remember so well everything that he did. It was just a wonderful memory for me. And my son, Richard Vanna White, is here showing all of the camp T-shirts. That was the biggest deal, was to get the T-shirts. We loved it. Thank you, West End, for giving me that opportunity. I'll never forget.
comes. I thought this was a good memory to share from our folks here tonight. The power of having the privilege of singing with the sanctuary choir. It is something where God is so present that it can quite literally bring tears to my eyes. I'm hoping Lachlan Cook is here. You are. Please welcome Lachlan Cook.
Hi. Some of y'all may not know me. I'm in the youth group. I am a junior in high school. And my story does get just like a little bit heavy, but I promise there's a happy ending. So when I was a kid, I came to Sunday school because my parents taught it and I couldn't stay home alone. I went out of necessity and a need for donuts and or goldfish. When I was 11, I went through confirmation because I had to. I was this angsty, emo, counterculture kid. I listened to a lot of Panic at the Disco and My Chemical Romance. It was an era. I'd separated from my faith, something I believe that many young people do in the internet age. I went almost every Sunday and I sucked it up. I got confirmed and I went to youth group occasionally. I was so inside my own head half the time, I didn't realize the community I was forming around me. I held going to church close to my chest, a secret I couldn't quite let myself be proud of. I showed up here and there whenever I was forced to. When I was 13, I was admitted to the Vanderbilt Psychiatric Hospital. One of the few things I packed was my Bible. I refused to let anyone visit me, too ashamed and scared of what my family would think. I was told I had a visitor one night, and I sighed, ready to argue with someone. But it was our youth leader, Emily. I ran out of the group room and greeted her, more excited than I had been all the days I was there. We talked, and all I could think was these people love me. When I was discharged, all I wanted to do was go to church. I needed to feel connected to God and to my community. Later that year, COVID-19 happened. I stopped showing up. I didn't do virtual Sunday school or small groups. I stepped away from my faith again. The time I spent not thinking about God or going to small groups or Sunday school wasn't necessarily wasted. We all have lives outside of our faiths. I was developing who I was outside of the community I was raised in. I was just starting to come into my own and see the world in my own way. I reconnected with my faith on a much deeper level when I was 14 or 15 because of this church and our youth group and the community I made here. I started showing up again. Emily talks about the power of listening and showing up, and I cannot explain enough how important it is. You don't have to come to parties. You don't have to go on the trips. You don't even have to show up every week. But showing up is integral in forming a community, especially one in faith. I've done so many amazing things with my youth group. The community is amazing. I remember singing Taylor Swift on the sidewalk of West End, right outside the church, during the parking lot fundraisers, getting people to park with us because we needed money for our trips. I remember dancing at Warmth in Winter, which is a youth thing in the winter. Doesn't happen anymore because of COVID, but oh well. And I remember doing the Cotton Eye Joe with our youth group to Rocky Top at our fall retreat. And I was dancing and laughing, and all I can think was, I am so glad that this is my family. The Alaska mission trip made me some of the best memories I have with this group, and I remember it fondly no matter how chaotic some of it was. There was a snowball fight near a glacier that we went to. The glacier was way up there, so we were at the foot of it. We went in June, and there was a snowball fight. And all I could think was, wow. And I remember all of us just running around. Our noses were cold, and we kept our hands tight in our pockets as much as we could, and the cold air was just nipping at our skin. And as I grow older, I realize how just absolutely insanely lucky I am to be raised in a community where God loves me, where I am fully accepted as a queer teenager. And I'm just so thankful to the people here and the memories I have and to God for placing me here. So, yeah.
Lachlan, next time you're last. Thank you. One of our folks here tonight loves how our community surrounds us with love, especially after the death of my fave. I don't know anybody who, for me, has shown up for as long as James Sewell. Please welcome James.
that was not my song because I didn't come to. I was invited to come to West End in June of 1970 and to lead the church's program and ministry in leisure and recreation. The first 2 floors of this new addition to the building were dedicated to recreation for all ages and for all types, for church members and for people from the community. And so we developed a good program here. But part of the program was not taking place just inside the church, but outside in God's world. And so every fall and every spring, we would take a group to the Smokies for family camping weekend. We started day camp for elementary children, 2 weeks every summer, out on Old Hickory Lake. We did trail hikes in the Rocky Mountains and in the Smoky Mountains. We did canoe adventures up in the Boundary Waters area. We would take all church weekends at Beersheba Springs, and I'm glad we're doing that again this fall. One of those I remember, Dr. A.J. Walton. Dr. Walton, Dr. Jack as we knew him, was retired from the Methodist Sunday School Board and was on the staff here at the church to take care of the older members, and especially those that were shut in. He was asked to preach the sermon that Sunday morning. And I've never heard a more powerful, provocative, and heart-gripping message than I have for that man who was far into his 90s. Part of that result of that sermon and part of the opening of the fellowship to Bart Durham and his new wife, she came to me and said she would like to be baptized. And so before the weekend was over, we had a baptismal service and baptized her into the Christian faith. One spring, I made arrangements with the Methodist Youth Camp in Leesburg, Florida, for us to have the whole camp reserved for West End Church. And I don't know the number now of that we went down there, but we took over the camp. We'd go to the dining hall for breakfast, and they would pack us a sack lunch. And then the families would disperse wherever they wanted to go in Middle Florida. But on Wednesday, the whole group went to Disney World. And we took over Disney World. And I remember that one of the exhibits was Sewell was killed in a duel. Right there on the tombstone in one of the exhibits. So we've had a great time. The sad thing about it is that the only thing that remains from that beginning back in 1970 is the gym. And I'm glad that it's still open and it's still being used.
I thought, just in the interest of time, that I would sum up so far. Mission, family, song, worship, baptism, creation, showing up, and opening up. I think that is what we want the church to be. And that's what it is. Gene Ferris.
Thank you, Tom, for introducing me. That better? First, I think I want to say that my family has been a part of this church since it was about to be built, and they had to wait. I think the Gambles and the Reeds were too. That's a point of pride We made it beautiful, and we have made it continue to be beautiful, not only in the physical structure, but also in its heart. And I want to talk a little bit about the heart of this church. I was baptized here as an infant with my grandparents and parents in tow. I was the eldest, as all of us were baptized here. It was our church, and I say it with a warm heart as I say that. My life journey was pretty typical. I attended Sunday school, I attended high school, I went to North Carolina to college and was away, and I came back and I went to work as a bacteriologist. My life was going swimmingly, and I even married my high school sweetheart. And 5 years later, we had our daughter, Betty. In 1976, when Betty was 2, Billy had his 4 wisdom teeth removed and would not stop bleeding after the surgery. We learned that he had acute leukemia and might not live through the night. Through wonderful medical care and the grace of God, he was able to achieve remission, but with the full knowledge that there was only a slim chance that he would be able to get into a second remission. We knew that. He took oral medication daily and was able to resume his normal routine with a few limitations, but it was pretty normal. After 3.5 years, the cancer returned, and at 34, he died. I was 32. Betty, our daughter, was 5. After learning of Billy's illness, a remarkable number of church members stepped up to the plate. There were blood donations, platelet donations, notes, letters, visits, and prayers, every imaginable type of support one could wish for. That support continued for Betty and me after the funeral service. In worship service, grief seemed overwhelming for me. My tears seemed to be ever present and sometimes uncontrollable. One Sunday, when I was especially emotional, I had used all of my tissues. I felt a gentle tap on my shoulder as someone handed me additional tissues. There was no judgment, no expectations, just love and support in the form of a tissue. It worked. I don't know. My grief eventually took the form of helping others as I worked to begin a singles ministry. It was called One with Another. Anyone who was a single adult, one who was never married or divorced or widowed, was welcomed. After starting very small with 12 people, it was good enough for our Lord. After starting it small, we grew it to over 50 attending each Tuesday night for supper and a program. For years, I even traveled Middle Tennessee and Kentucky to assist other churches that wanted to begin a singles ministry. In 1986, I married childhood friend Bill Ferris, and after almost 37 years together, we are especially proud of our blended family, our 3 children, their spouses, and 6 grandchildren. It's amazing what can grow from the loss and the gift of love, even in the form of a tissue.
Our daughter was 2 years old on Christmas Eve at the family service. And I hope everybody here has had the opportunity. If not, you've got 9 months or so to plan for it. At the 4 o'clock Christmas Eve service. Yes, midnight's beautiful. Yes, it's lovely and it's spectacular and it's gorgeous. But until you have seen your child in the donkey costume, you've not had Christmas. And Virginia was the donkey 1 year in the procession of animals to the manger, where the baby Jesus lay, who was Anna Bigelow. Well, Peter Bigelow, come on down.
Hi, my name's Peter Bigelow. I'm Anna's brother, as you guys might be able to tell. So Anna's 4 years older than me, and I've been at this church as long as I can remember, pretty much. And so, as a kid, I was always looking up to Anna, and I was seeing what she was doing. I would go to Sunday school, she would go to Sunday school. She would get food, I would get food. We'd both always go to church. We were always there. And then one day, she went to confirmation, and I had never heard of that before, because she was the oldest in my family. I didn't know what was going on, and, I mean, she was there, and I guess she was having a good time, because every time she came back, she was happy. She would tell me all about it, and I always wanted to go to confirmation. I wanted to get confirmed. So it came my time to go to confirmation, and I did it. I got confirmed, and that was, I guess, 3 years ago. So in confirmation and before confirmation, Anna was in youth group, and youth group was this, like, magical thing to me. I'd never heard of it before. It was like fun Sunday school. Not that Sunday school isn't fun. I love Sunday school. But I mean, we go on trips, we do all this fun stuff, and I really wanted to. But of course, I was stuck in confirmation, which is also fun. I remember one of my fondest memories is going to a youth wrap up the year gathering in McWhirter Hall. And I remember watching the slideshows from my favorite trip now called Wilderness Trail. And one of my favorite pictures is I was in 4th grade when I saw it. My sister was in 8th, so she was in youth group. And one of my favorite pictures is them all standing on this big rock at the top of a mountain. And they're looking down, and you can see everything. And I just wanted to do that so bad. I wanted to hike up there. I wanted to go to that same rock, and I wanted to look down. And so I got to 8th grade. 7th grade we didn't go because of COVID. And I got to 8th grade, and I said, when's Wilderness Trail? Emily, when's Wilderness Trail? I want to go to Wilderness Trail. And she was like, Peter, it's in the summer. You have to wait. So I waited the whole time, and I went. And it was amazing. And I remember I was hiking up to the top of the mountain with one of my friends, and I looked down. I was on a big rock, and I could see everything. I saw fields. I saw one building in the distance. I saw a baseball field. I'm still a little confused why the baseball field was there, but I just could see everything. And at that moment, I just realized what this church has done to me. I looked back, and I saw everything. I saw Sunday school. I saw confirmation. I saw youth group. I saw all the pastors I've known. I saw the people that have raised me here. And it's been amazing. Thank you.
Before I read this next card, I just want to ask Jack Turner, you guys here? Got it. Good. We were looking for a church. We'd been looking for about 6 months. We walked in and we were greeted by Ray Sells and others we had known throughout the years. After the sermon and the service, we greeted Michael Williams, whom we'd known previously, with a hug and an invitation to give us a call. Afterwards, I thought how many hands he had shaken and people he had talked with. I didn't expect much. But he called, and he came, and he conquered. We didn't look anyplace else. This was home. Monty Smith.
I'm Monty Smith. I'm third generation of the church. Have a quick little story that shows what a small world the West End family is. Move forward. Hello. Hello. Can you hear me now? Quick little story just shows what a small world the West End family is. My mother and father were married in 1948 at Second Presbyterian Church on Belmont Boulevard, but married by Dr. James Henley, senior pastor of West End, who became Bishop Henley. Mom told me that the sanctuary was too large and the chapel was too small for the wedding, and she lived around the corner on Woodmont Boulevard. Makes sense. Unfortunately, Mom's dad died 10 days before the wedding, and that grandmother moved around a lot right afterwards, became sort of a lost soul. At one point in the early 50s, she lived in the Washington Apartments on 21st Avenue South, right above Hillsborough Village. At those apartments, the renters had what they called lockers, or storage rooms in the basement. Had a great aunt on my father's side that lived there till the mid-70s, and I helped her a lot in those lockers. Keep in mind, those apartments were built in the early 40s, so the foundation was old stone, lots of nooks and crannies. Fast forward 50 years. Another mother was helping her daughter move out of the apartment and clean out the locker. In one of those nooks and crannies was a shoebox. She pulled the shoebox out. Inside the shoebox were some black and white photos, a baby book, and a certificate. And let me read it right. The certificate says, Beginner's Department to the Primary Department at West End UMC Sunday School, dated September the 29th, 1935, and signed by Dr. Costin Harrell. I assume ME is Methodist Episcopal. A quick phone call to the church. On the back certificate, somebody wrote down Cindy Moore, so I think she talked to, whoever called, this lady talked to Cindy. The baby's name is Carolyn. It was in the baby book. In the shoebox. Did I say it was in the shoebox? In the baby book, name was Carolyn, and the name of the certificate was Clyde Montgomery. Do you know a Carolyn Montgomery or Clyde Montgomery? There's a quick response. Yes. That's Carolyn Smith. Mom. Mom got her baby book back and a lock of her hair and some black and white photos. We don't know who in the world they are.
I want to read this next card because it goes to our next speaker. Roy Clark and Russ Monfort were awesome Bible teachers and scholars. Our 3 children were christened here. Great adult Sunday school class. I taught 3-year-olds. Teaching parent effectiveness training. Oh, where were you when? We need that rule book. Actually, still need that rule book. Painting the nursery, pink and blue. It is a special pleasure to welcome back Buddy Benedict.
Well, as many of you have already said, you grew up here. I did the same, was baptized in that big sanctuary that we just passed coming up here. I grew up sitting by my grandmother's side, my grandmother Benedict, 5 rows back next to the concrete pillar where the little thing was you listened if you were deaf. And I would play with that until she told me to quit. And I remember her distinctly. She sold church bonds in the middle of the Depression to raise money to build that sanctuary. They named Scales Chapel after her. Her name was Ann Scales. So my identity over the years has been tied to this church and still is, although I'm no longer here every Sunday. I was asked to speak about Russ Monfort. Those of you that raise your hand that knew Russ Monfort. How many people in here? That's a pretty good number. Where did he come from? Mary Stump can tell you. She was on the staff parish relations committee that hired him. But here we go from Roy Clark, now Bishop, then Bishop Clark, to Russ Montfort, a 5-foot Bantam rooster who knew how to preach. And he had a background of being a farm boy, raised on a farm, 3-room schoolhouse, all the way through divinity school, through the Methodist system, 44 years of ministry in the Methodist Church. And Mary and her group decided he was going to be our next pastor, and went to the bishop then, a gentleman named Ed Tullis, and said, "This is who we want at West End." He said, "Well, Miss Thumb, I'm sorry, that's not the way we do things." Now, I think he was sorry he said that. One thing led to another, and Russ showed up here and became our senior pastor. Where was I? I was in divinity school. After being in business for 37 years, I decided to go back to school, and I was in my 3rd year of divinity school when Russ showed up. We got to be real good friends, not as a pastor, but as a friend and pastor. It came to my 3rd year in divinity school, and every 3rd year student has to do a field education project where they go try on the ministry for a semester and have a mentor to coach them through whatever problems they might have. Well, I came to Russ and said, "Russ, would you be my mentor?" He said, "Sure. What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I'd like to work with those that are facing their own demise, death and healing, and death after resurrection." He said, "All right, we'll line it up for you." Russ gave me a free hand in doing all that I wanted to do. He said, "You will learn more by talking to these people and walking them through their life transition than you'll ever find in a book." He said, "I want you to do these and keep me in touch with how you're doing." I remember specifically Betty Evans, Rob Ledyard, Chase Deloney. They were a few of the people that allowed me into their lives during the final days of their life. And Russ was correct. I learned more about myself than I did anything else in dealing with these folks, special people. Came time to graduate. I needed an appointment, and here comes Mary Stump back into the picture. And I was a little afraid about this church because people knew more about me here than I wanted them to. And somehow we worked it out, Mary, for me to go on the staff in 1983. Russ was heavenly to me. Gave me, as I said, a free rein. He didn't ask me to write his sermons, but he did everything else for me. I served on the staff from 83 after I graduated until 1986, when Bishop Ernest Newman asked me to leave here and go start Christ United Methodist Church out in Cool Springs in Franklin. Diane and my family were my congregation. I had no people. I had a 50 by 80 tent and no people with an open hand asking people to come join us. Well, Diane became youth director plus a lot of other things, and we've made it through those early years. If we could just find people that were willing to sit out in the poison ivy and the chiggers while we had church service under that tent. It was so hot under the tent, we had to worship at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Everybody brought their own chairs, and we had a big picnic supper afterwards. I'm still carrying around some of my mother's banana pudding from those nights. I left this church, with the knowledge that I had gained in working with Russ. And Russ had a special humor about him that all of us enjoyed. I know Mary and Paul remember it. Russ wrote a couple of books. One of them was called Buck and the Band of Angels and Who's in Charge Here? Let me read you a couple of excerpts. This is a comment from Joseph Huff, president of Union Theological Seminary, who, by the way, was dean of the Divinity School when I was in school. Said, Russ T. Montford, one of the Methodist greatest preachers, has created an insightful, often witty collection of stories to which the reader can return many times and be rewarded with the joy of new discovery. So Russ had gained quite a reputation as being a powerful preacher, and he lived up to it. His other book was called, let's see, Who's in Charge Here? A few excerpts from that book. He always found humor in some of the most serious things. He said that he had, excuse me for switching these around, I get them backwards. He remembered one of his parishioners, his name was Lefty. He said sometime during the early morning service, at the end of the service, out at the front door, Lefty came up to me and said he had decided to shoot his wife and wanted me to pray for him. Other stories like that, if you ever got the West End report, there was a column that Russ wrote that everybody wanted to read. The whole conference was anxious to get that West End report to see what Russ had to say. What a time I had. I'm thanks to Mary and that South Parish Relations Committee who started me off on my first real appointment out in the woods out in Franklin. But Russ Montford, there's some people walk into your life and they shape you irrevocably. You've got them. You know who they are. Russ was one for me. He took me in not as a divinity student, not as a pre-preacher, but as a friend, and treated me as such. He gave me the ability to go out and do what we did, how to get along with people like he did, how to try to preach a meaningful sermon. It wasn't too complicated, and showed me the ways to be in ministry. That shaped me in ways that I still am appreciative of. Thank you.
Montfort was a powerful preacher, reminiscent of the saying that you don't want to be the guy that follows Bear Bryant at Alabama. You didn't want to be the guy that followed Russ Montfort at West End. And so after a little time, we entered into a period of reflection and thought and careful prayer and study about, well, who are we apart from these great leaders? Two of our folks here today list as among their fondest and most impactful memories participating in the streams of listening during Ruach and Renewal. The whole church pursuing listening for God in many ways. One of the things that came out of that time was an understanding of how central worship was for us and that time together in that sacred space, in this sacred space. One of the elements of that sacred space, as many of you know, though it doesn't get a lot of use these days, is the lectern, or the pulpit, if you will. Lee White, you get to tell that story. I hope.
My name is Lee White. My mother is India Weber, my grandmother Ann Weber, and my grandfather Fred Weber, who passed away in 2009. I have a lot of fond memories of this church, a lot of friends in this room. But I'm going to tell the story of how the pulpit came to be in the sanctuary. In 1980, Dr. Roy Clark asked for a chancel revision study committee because of concerns he had regarding sightline, flexibility for liturgical actions. The size of the pulpit was too small and too low. In marriage ceremonies, he wanted the betrothal portion to take place on one level and the covenant and marriage on another. But the primary concern was around Holy Communion. Later in 1980, Russ Montfort became senior minister, and the chancel revision study was presented at that time to the administrative board, but it wasn't until the summer of 1984 the chancel revision study committee received an emergency call from my grandfather, Fred Weber, who was in London on an antique buying trip. This emergency call came to discuss an old pulpit from a Methodist church that was in an antique store that was saved from a damaged church during World War II. My grandfather offered to donate the pulpit to the church so long as the church would agree to pay for the shipping and also use it. Although they didn't exactly know, the church didn't exactly know what they were going to do with it, the church accepted his offer. Once this very large and beautiful pulpit arrived, it was an easy decision for the church at the time to use it. It would use it on one side with a smaller lectern on the other, which would improve the visibility. I guess it was formerly right in the center, so moved to the sides, and it would improve the view to the choir. It was also decided to extend the communion rails on each end of the chancel area, and kneeling cushions would be added. And by the way, my grandmother, made one of the needlepoint kneelers. So lastly, it was decided to enlist the help of architect Paul Goodson to bring drawings and suggestions for an appropriate communion table and lectern. Now, this decision did not come without opposition. So in November of '84, the pulpit was displayed for 4 Sundays so the congregation could express their opinions and wishes. There were some. In February 1985, a survey was conducted to help the administrative board make the final decision about the chancel revision. The congregation approved the new pulpit use and placement in a 2-to-1 vote in favor of the new pulpit. With the congregation's approval, the admin board passed the plan in May 1985. According to the West End report, the communion table and lectern were commissioned to be hand-carved, as my mother said, by a couple hippies, but by Harvey and David Baker from Dunmire Hollow in Wayne County. In 1987, all of the work was completed with the installation of the pulpit, lectern, and communion table that are there now. And there's a wonderful plaque that I like to visit with, commemorating the gift of it from my grandfather for my grandmother and the church. So that's the story.
Only a couple of times I have climbed to the top of Mount Weber. And it is truly high enough and the steps are tall enough that you have a chance to rethink your entire message from start to finish, which is a blessing. Well, Mary and Paul, we've heard enough about you. It's time to hear from you. Please welcome Mary and Paul Stone.
Okay, I'll start. Can you hear me? I want to say first that it's not really memory, but I want to express gratitude to this church for all it has meant in my life. Paul and I both were born, baptized, joined the church, married here, raised our children here, and we also go be in the columbarium here. So you can't get rid of us. But I think it's just so interesting. All of you who've spoken have brought back so many memories to me because I know so many generations. I not only knew Buddy, but I knew his parents and a little bit his grandparents. I have known Dr. Stoves, I did not know Dr. Stoves, but he married my mother and father. And, but from Dr. Stoves on forward, I've known every senior pastor and every associate pastor that's been at this church, and my heart is so filled with gratitude for each one of them. Buddy, I didn't know a whole lot about how the Methodist Church worked when I was head of staff parish. And I did go to the bishop and say, this is who we want. And he did say, that isn't the way we do that, Mary. But I'm just so grateful for everyone who's been here. And I remember when Roy left and I introduced Russ for the first time, I said, Roy Clark leaves great big shoes to fill. But Russ brings his own shoes, and that has been true with every pastor and associate pastor that we have had the joy to have at this church, including our most recent, Carol. Thank you. And I want to say the associate pastors of this church have been wonderful too, and James Sewell and Bill are still giving their time and service to this church, even though they've been retired for so long. So thank you so much for that, too. All the stories that you all have told about your families just bring back so many memories to me. But I will say that I'm so grateful. When you start naming people, that's a mistake because you leave out people. But the 3 Sunday school teachers that I think of the most are Fred Weber. He taught me. He was my high school Sunday school teacher and the reason I came to Sunday school. And George Cate, who was my college Sunday school teacher and the reason I came to Sunday school. And lots of others, but to this day I will have to say that West End Church has to be grateful to Heath Jones. And I'm sure each person in this room has had the opportunity to hear Heath teach and how lucky we are to have all these beautiful people. I am filled with gratitude, and I'm also filled with gratitude because I met this guy here in kindergarten.
I say that she didn't really pay me any attention in kindergarten, and it took until college in Actwood when I was in medical school, and she heard I was going to be a doctor, so that I appreciated her in kindergarten much more than she did. I'm Paul Stum, and what I've done is to write out what I'm going to say so that for 2 reasons I think I will accomplish. One is I won't overrun my time, and 2, I won't just ad-lib and struggle along and bring you along a path you don't want to come down. So, first, I think I should tell you what my frame of mind is as I begin this assignment. This is easy. If you were with me some 3 weeks ago in McWhorter Hall, as we listened to Mac Parkle make his beautiful statement of what this church means to him, I'll simply try to paraphrase the feeling that he conferred, and that is that this church gives me and all who belong a wonderfully comfortable atmosphere in which we may participate and contribute in whatever way God leads us. I don't feel guilty if I could be doing more. Max certainly overstated this in his case, but the opportunity is always there, comfortably. I feel comfortable because you, my church family, make me feel that way. So, let me tell you about an experience that I witnessed some 20 years ago in working with our overnight visitors in the Room in the Inn program. On that night, I had driven the bus downtown to pick up the men. I was given our list of 12 men, and I called out their names as they each got on the bus. Then when we got back to West End and they got off the bus, there were 12 names, but there were 13 men. We had somehow acquired a stowaway. But then a strange thing happened, and this is what they taught me. What they did was to take up for this stowaway. He was one of them. One of them said, I know we only have 12 cots, but he can have mine. I can sleep in a chair. And another said, I know you only have 12 lunch sacks for us to take with us tomorrow. He can have mine. And surely we've got enough supper tonight and breakfast tomorrow morning. They knew that he had broken a rule. They somehow knew that he was basically okay, but he was struggling with some problem, and their job was to support him. And in this process, I, who was supposed to be mentoring them, was given a lesson in kindness. Now, in the short time I have left, I want to make a confession, and that is, I do feel sad that in this wonderful church that we have been given, with its wonderful 150-year history and its wonderful edifice and its wonderful services and programs and its wonderful opportunities, I feel sad, and this does not happen often, but it does happen more than we want. I feel sad that we sometimes have members who stop coming, and they've left to find another church home. Somehow, we have not found the way to explain this gift that we have been given. We do understand that God calls us to be the church. We all know that we have drunk from wells that others before us dug. So my prayer is that we continue to find those ways which we each have to explain and witness to each other this beautiful gift that we have inherited.
I just want to add one other thing that I thought about that when someone was speaking a while ago. I don't know how many of you, I love that West End continues to be involved in outreach ministry to people. I don't know how many of you all know this or not, but there was a building where the parking lot is. I've forgotten who talked about that, but it was a doctor's office actually for a long time, and then West End bought it. That building, I'll tell you what West End used it for besides Sunday school classes. It was a first used, or maybe second used, for the first home for abused women. And I remember when the administrative board voted on that, because a lot of people were very afraid to let the building be used for that purpose, because they were afraid the men would come and find the women and we'd have problems, which was a legitimate concern. But I was so proud of West End for doing that, and they used it until the building could not meet codes anymore and had to be torn down. But let's keep up doing those same kind of things. I know we are, but thank you.
There you are. The mic is yours.
The mic is mine.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to be brief.
If you need it, just shout out.
I came in 1970 with my husband, James Sewell, and we took a tour of this building, this new building. It was all new, looking for a program. And we went through all the rooms of the whole building and all the ones downstairs. And then they brought me in this door right down here. And I walked into this huge room, nothing except junk. People had cleaned out their rooms in the school and everything, and this is where it was. But I really didn't see it because I saw a theater, and it was wonderful. And a theater it has become, and with a lot of work and a lot of planning. We left West End after 13 years, and James was preaching, of course. But when he retired, he said, now you can go anywhere you want to go. I'll go with you. Well, you know where I went. I had grandchildren here. I had friends here. And this is where we came. And we came right to the theater. And we had done many plays before we had left. But it had kind of changed. But after he retired and we did some plays up here, Kirk McNeil retired. Kirk was a dramatist. And James and Kirk McNeil built where you're sitting right now. They did the labor. They found the materials to do it. And you are now sitting on the theater seats. I don't know how many of you remember what it was like before this. And then they began to build the theater that we have right here. And I'm so grateful that James came back with me and that we have enjoyed the love and the fellowship of this congregation for so many years.
I didn't come here expecting to get a challenge. But thank you, Paul. That's our call, isn't it? Our call is to do what we've done in here, out there. Just to tell these stories. If you could bottle up this, and I'm sorry it was more than an hour, if you could bottle up this hour and a half and hand it to somebody and say, drink of this. Well, guess what? You can. You can. We all can every day. Not all hour and a half. You might lose somebody. But the pieces that really caught your heart, you get to share those stories now. In fact, that's why we tell stories. For the entertainment of the audience, for sure, but so that the stories get retold again and again. Thank you, all of you, for sharing your heart, your family's hearts, and opening yourself to an ancient tradition, older even than this church. Carol, would you like to close us out in prayer?
Let us pray. Oh God, you are at the center of our story, and you now call us to turn the page and start the next chapter. And so, building upon the faith and the witness that we have heard and experienced in all that has gone before, we step out in faith to continue to tell the story, to live it out in today's world among the people you call us to today. We thank you so much for those who have borne witness tonight. And as we go back to our homes, we ask that you would grant us a good night's rest and wake us up again in the morning to serve you with joy. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.